Hello, everybody, and welcome back to That Milan podcast. As you can tell by the tone in my voice, I'm very excited for this week's episode. Matt is alongside us, and as you can see, our two-time recurring guest, me, Marco. Marco joins us once again to talk Milan. Marco, we have good news today, finally.
It's what a day this is.
And it's besides the fact that you were here, we were messaging on WhatsApp about what to discuss for this episode. Even Matt and I, we were like, man, I don't know. We got to fill in topics. It's really just kind of Musah. We beat the dead horse of the striker situation. But that's not the case today. But first and foremost, guys, before we get into that, how are you both? Marco, start with you, and then Santangelo.
How am I?
Yeah, in general.
Yeah, no, I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm pumped, man. I mean, it's just good to get some good news, honestly. Like it's just been a long, month and a half, 2 months, and to finally get that, here we go. I was like biking home from work, and I was like, let's go, finally, man. So I'm pumped. I think I'm a little cautious as well. I don't want to get carried away, but again, it's good news, and we always take that around this club these days.
Santangelo, same sentiments.
Yeah, it's some relief, right? I thought there were moments where I was like, maybe this won't happen, and then I was like, maybe it will, because he kept denying other clubs. And
your Twitter account said otherwise, though.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. Like, with so many emotions with this transfer, I just hope this guy is a special player, which seems like he is based on what I'm reading from a lot of people. So let's get into
we could just jump into the deep end with it.
Yeah.
Jashari is done. It's finally finished. The deal is over the line. We saw a lot of stuff over 2 months, obviously, guys. Like, this was something like I was like thinking back on it. I was like, I'm not even sure. Maybe last time Marco was on it could have been a topic. That's how long it was that this dragged out. I think this was even worse than the CDK one, to be quite honest with you. And CDK was just annoying. It was like Leeds or Milan. It was like, my God, between the saga of Tade's interviews in the paper, between Club Brugge's executives being interviewed when they were in Milan doing a deal with Inter for Stankovic, I believe his name is.
Mm-hmm.
And you just see and hear the interviews from Club Brugge's executives. We don't comment on transfers, even though that very morning they commented on the transfer in a newspaper interview. And then after, I believe it was the Super Cup in Belgium,
their captain
decides to comment on the transfer. And not only that, he gives a figure that has never been done. I have never seen that in my life, unless like you're reading about something from like 60 years ago when captains used to be player managers and like executives all at the same time, doing every job possible. This was insanely drawn out. Tade goes in the newspaper interview saying, we're not raising our offer. Every newspaper in Belgium, Italy, wherever, was all saying that Jashari was rejecting every single club possible for this, and he only wants Milan. We even saw press releases of him at Milan Barcelona in 2011 about how he was a Milan fan for the longest time, and lo and behold, the deal gets done. The reports last night, I know you guys saw it. Everyone was saying, oh, they're one step away. But it did feel a little different. So, Marco, we'll start with you. When you saw that this deal was about to be done, what did you think? Was this, oh my God, again? Is it almost done? Or like, okay, actually, I think this is going to get over the line within the next 12 to 18 hours.
You know, it's funny. I was still skeptical about it because I was seeing more and more reports because, like, you know, not every journalist is the most reliable. And like you see some of the heavy hitters that were mentioning it. So I started to believe a little bit. It's only when, shout out Kush, when I saw Kush post a video last night from like an ATV, whatever he was in. And I was like, dude, if this guy is like taking time out of his vacation or whatever to make this video, this has to be legit too. So only until I saw that, because clearly he was busy, I was like, wow, this might happen. And then lo and behold, we get to here we go. But up until that point, I was still like, something will happen. Some executive will come out and we're still short, or you know what I mean? And an offer came in from a late Saudi league team, or you know what I mean? Like it just was a month and a half, almost 2 months of continuous left turns and right turns. So I didn't really know, but yeah, Kush's video sold me.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, honestly, and I guess retract my initial comments regarding how I felt whether or not the deal was going to happen. I began to grow very confident in the past days, and I thought that, okay, something's got to give. And I've been tweeting about it, my feelings and thoughts, and people have been saying I've been negative or I've been positive or it's not happening or Milan's not doing this or dragging their feet, all these sorts of things. The more Ardon kept blocking other options, the more it became abundantly clear that this guy doesn't want to play here anymore. He's not going to play for Club Brugge anymore. Milan kept bringing their offer. Despite being told no, you can only get told no so many times when it comes to like negotiations before you're like, all right, this is not getting them, we're moving on. But it was very clear from the very beginning, once Tare came in, Allegri came in, and the fact that they didn't pivot to another option. Despite reports saying it was Guerra, which was basically one of the more preliminary options that was linked to Milan while they were discussing Jashari, right? And then eventually it kind of fizzled out because I think from what I understand with his situation with Valencia, there was like a new contract talk there, right? Which stalled, right? But when I looked at the way this negotiation or this saga played out, I thought to myself, if Milan didn't want the player as bad as they apparently do, and they didn't put in such a substantial offer, basically flirting with a club record, and they still haven't pulled out of this deal in the beginning of August, they're going to get him. They're going to either raise the deal or raise the offer, or they're just going to say, all right, fine, like we'll do something different here to get this deal done.
Yeah.
Sure enough, they get the deal done, and it's relief. But I think obviously with this, which we will continue to talk about, you're raising those expectations, because on top of the fact that we know with the connection or the CDK situation, how that played out, we know he plays a different position. But for how long this dragged out with Club Brugge, for how substantial the fee is, the package and everything, no matter what happens, the expectations are going to be very, very high. And now it's going to be up to him to deliver. And it's also going to be up to Max Allegri and the collective group to make sure that he settles in and he is comfortable, because there's obviously going to be that mounting pressure for him to live up to this fee.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing in all of this, is that you're flirting with a club record. I think this is also the top 2 sales in Club Brugge's history, are CDK and now Jashari. So for me, I think that it is tough for a player like this to join in this situation, I think, because of where the fan base stands with management and ownership. And anyone that they kind of sign is outside of Modric, I think. I know that they have a little bit of a softer spot for someone like Ricci because he's Italian. I haven't really had many of those. I feel like almost every single time under this ownership, you see a deal of a rather unknown player, there's always pushback from the supporters. And to me, I think I want to look at this objectively. And I know, Marco, you were talking about this before we went on here, is that it was still really just 1 year in a respectable league. He was player of the year. He was young player of the year. So he shined immediately. He's already capped as a Swiss international. This isn't largely the same thing. And I know a lot of people are lazily doing this PTSD with CDK and how he didn't work out. Mind you, he was the only addition that summer. And CDK was also not positionally transparent, I guess you could say, where you knew where you slot him in. CDK was like, is he a right winger? Is he a 10? Is he a second striker? It's kind of all over the place, and Pioli never really figured it out on top of him getting off to a rough start. Jashari is a pretty obvious plug and play with what the formation is likely going to be, which also changes a lot of things, by the way, and how they lined up. I know there's been a lot of 3 at the back with wing backs. I think that changes now because this one's over the line, and we'll get into what this midfield makeover is, because it pretty much is a makeover. So for me, I think Jashari has to ease in. I think you guys are right. It's August 5th. He'll probably be ready by August 6th in terms of like being in the country, being in the city of Milan. And then at that point, guys, we're 11 days out from Bari. He's not going to be ready for that. He's not going to be probably ready for the Cremonese match. He hasn't been really playing. He's been training on the side if he's been training with Club Brugge. So I think the patience needs to arrive for quite some fans. Because it's going to take a bit. And I think that people need to be mindful of it. But again, when you see this figure, when we see how this saga drew out, I think there's going to be some impatience from this fan base. Ultimately, I think that you have to not back or trust, but you have to at least somewhat give a break to new management like Tade and Allegri when they wanted a guy like this so badly, that we have to allow this to breathe and allow this guy to adapt, because Italy is still incredibly difficult. No matter who you are as a player, everyone talks about how tough it is. What are your kind of expectations, Marco, for Jashari, I guess, in his first couple months here? Because it's going to take a bit to adjust for him. And then obviously all these new midfielders adjusting to Allegri on top of it. There's going to be a lot to kind of take in.
Yeah, I feel like you mentioned, right? It's the saga was so drawn out that I feel like it kind of elevated his profile a little bit. Like if Milan went in a couple of months ago and just, put a 30 million euro bid in, they got accepted, we signed him, the story would have been, oh, Milan signed this promising kid from Club Brugge, seems really good. But now it's the fact that he's been in the news for 2 months, and we keep seeing the articles of the Saudi clubs coming in, and we saw West Ham was in, or Wolves, and some loose links to Manchester United. Like all of a sudden it's this, he's one of the hottest profiles in world football, right? But he's still a kid that is 22 years old. He's had one really good year in the Belgian Pro League. Of course, he was the player of the year, and that's incredible. But the Serie A is without a doubt, despite what people in my comment section say about the league, it is without a doubt a step up from the Belgian Pro League, and a big one. And to your point, he hasn't been playing. He hasn't been training with the team. I think we have to be patient with him when he comes in and give him a little bit of time. But I'm not buying into the PTSD thing with CDK. I just feel like I look at Jashari and I see a guy who's like got a bit more fight and fire to him, like when he plays with a bit more intensity, where it felt like CDK was kind of like the timid guy who came in. And we saw the post back then when he wasn't scoring, Rafa would post like, it's coming, bro, it's coming. I don't think that Jashari is that kind of player. I think he's just he can't wait to get going kind of player. And I think eventually he will come good. I think he'll be a fantastic player for us. But I do think the first couple of months, I wouldn't be surprised if, he's not putting the best of performances in right away. I wouldn't be shocked about that. And I think that's perfectly okay.
So just a tweet from Matteo Bonetti this morning, just to kind of speak on Jashari profile-wise and how he kind of maybe differs in terms of personality to CDK. So tweet from Matteo: former striker Mario Frick, who was Ardon's teammate in Switzerland, was quoted as saying he's from another planet. Already at 20, he was the leader of the locker room. He carries himself like a veteran. He's a strong, good passer and direct. Mm-hmm. I think that the personality thing and the fact that that is sort of how he's being billed as a more of a veteran in a younger player's body at 23. And again, we all talked about the fact that he's doesn't have a wealth of experience in a big league or, this abundant amount of top shelf performances in the Champions League. He was very good last year, yes. But I think the personality aspect is so important in any transfer. And I think you really start to see that with, these big price tags, because again, the mounting pressure, the social media bombardment that these players get to succeed immediately. I think that with Jashari, the fact that he is a midfielder and he is going to be sort of bumping shoulders in the day-to-day grind with a guy like Luka Modric, a very experienced serial winning manager, and like Max Allegri. And again, I know for all the criticism we've given Zlatan Ibrahimovic, someone like Zlatan. So the fact that you throw all those things in the bucket, you also throw in the fact that there is something to be said. There is that sort of pull that us as Milan fans tend to like kind of get drawn into when a player says, I only want Milan. It still feels good to be wanted that badly by a player that frankly has options. Granted, the options that were reported are not Milan. Despite how Milan have fallen in recent years, it still feels great to be wanted to that capacity for a young top player, because how many times have we seen it where, we like a player, okay, he goes somewhere else and he's just a star, we can't afford him. So for someone to be so emotionally attached to wanting to join Milan and standing firm on that for the entirety of this saga, it does feel good. So I think it's very important for us as fans to repay that to Ardon when he does arrive, because we're all going to be asking for him to be a some 40 million euro player, but we also need to repay that because this kid did hold out for Milan. So I think people also need to be respective of that aspect of this whole thing.
Good luck with that.
I know, but
I know.
I know. I agree with you. Hey, we get people in our comment section like who are now banned that are like basically going off about like, oh, like you won't even notice a difference in this guy in training and every people who just don't even watch this guy just commenting on it because of narratives. Like, listen, guys, say this very simply before we move on topics. You don't have to like Redbird to like this player. They're separate. Sure. Just relax, chill out. Okay, with that, there's a complete makeover, guys. Ricci, Modric, Jashari, all coming into Milan this summer. Basically, what? We go 39 total package. Ricci was around 23, 25. Basically, if you want to be loose about it, it's the Rangers money. Yeah. And then you get Luka Modric in here, who was a free transfer. Another legendary player, someone who wanted to be here. Ricci, also somebody who wanted to be here. All of a sudden, these three, plus Yusuf Fofana, and I mentioned it in the TikTok video I made earlier, if you loosely want to put in Warren Bondo, his future is a little murky at the moment. But, guys, that is very respectable. So Marco, like, what are your initial thoughts on that? I know we have to wait a little bit on Jashari. Ricci, proven in Serie A. I think will do well in Allegri's system. Modric is Modric. Fofana, I think, is the ultimate X factor in the midfield. I think with more freedom moving forward, I think that's better for him if he's placed in that position. But overall, just on paper, talent-wise, this is a huge step up from last season. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I like the fact that, you look at these players and they all kind of offer you something a little bit different too, which I feel like is the issue we had last year, amongst many other things, where it was just like they all kind of did the same thing. Like all the midfielders, right? And we tried these double pivots all over the place.
By the way, I almost forgot.
Correct. Yeah, Ruben as well in there, right? And I think you look at losing Reinders, and that's huge, and we're gonna miss him. But the fact that we turned the transfer money and not salary for exactly, but you turn that into Ricci and Modric and Jashari, I think you got to be happy with that. It could have been so much worse. But I like the fact that we finally have, and Ricci was one that I'll still talk about because I made videos about him months and months and months ago. I know they had deals kind of in principle with him ahead of time, but I just looked at our team last year and I struggled to look at any game where we had control in the midfield. Like maybe the Venezia game, they won 4-0 that game, whatever it was, the game against Sassuolo in the Coppa Italia. If we played a decent to good team at any point last year, we always relinquished control in the midfield. We couldn't keep it because that wasn't Reinders' game. That wasn't Loftus-Cheek's game, and he was injured for most of that year too. Even Fofana, for the most part, is not really a 6. He really isn't, but he does have the physical aspects, and he can get a stick a leg in and get a good tackle in. But again, they all did the same thing. But now I look at this team, and I see Modric coming in, not going to play every game, every single minute. But what he can give to players like Jashari and Ricci. Ricci's finally that tempo controlling regista that I think that we need. Jashari can pick the ball up and progress it as well. And I think Ruben Loftus-Cheek, when he's healthy, can do the same thing. But I also think that Fofana mixed in there, I think will benefit quite a bit too, because it won't be kind of him and Reinders battling to take on the same responsibilities. I feel like you'll have a bit more freedom with someone like Ricci staying back and setting the tempo. So I really like it. I'm feeling really optimistic. I honestly, I don't know, maybe recency bias a bit, but I really feel like our midfield this year, although I do miss Reinders, is just better than last year. It just feels much more well-rounded.
Yeah, exactly. Well-rounded, balanced Sant'Angelo. I think those are the operating words for this, because we talked about it all the time. And it even went back to Pioli when they're trying to force this double pivot of players who are not defensive midfielders, to Marco's point, which we mention all the time, like Reinders, not. Loftus-Cheek, not. Fofana, better than the others, but still not. Because we saw Fofana had around 6-7 assists in Serie A.
Yeah.
That's not normal for a defensive midfielder. And largely a lot of his struggles were, lack of a better term, fucking up. And really just allowing a lot of counterattacks, lazy stuff. And what Bonetti's point was, Matt, last episode, is that Ricci keeps things very nice and tidy. and you don't really have to worry about that. And Modric's work rate is, dude, I thought Gattuso used to have 4 lungs. Like Modric is something else. So what are your kind of thoughts on this? I know you've touched upon this quite a bit, but there's a lot of cooks in this midfield kitchen right now.
Yeah, I think unlike last year where it felt as though many times Fofana and Reinders in that double pivot felt as though they were kind of impeding on one another as far as like what they needed to do, where they need to go with the ball, who to go forward, who to go back. And it was evident in the fact that, once Milan made that decision to put Tijani more forward because they needed what he did and what he produced in the final third, that's where you started to see Tijani raise his game in the goal department and assist department, but it left a major void in defense. And I think obviously, spoiler alert to Manchester City fans that might stumble upon this video, but you're not getting a tremendously high performing defensive midfielder. Like Tijani is who he is, and he's a fantastic midfielder. Like, I love him. I wish he was still here, but that he's not that type of defensive profile. So I think that with all the impediment that those two dealt with last year, I sense a little bit more of a balance in this midfield 3 or 4 players that we're going to have in this sort of conversation, because you guys are right. Ricci is that sort of tempo setting player, those sort of sideways passes, taking the air out of the ball. I think he does that really well. He is a strong player on the ball. I know you might look at him and say physically he doesn't look like he's this sort of bully Gattuso type of player, but he is, in my opinion, somewhat similar, like a sneaky, strong individual like a Tonali was, where he'll get into a challenge, he'll break up play, he'll do a lot of those things. And, his game isn't goals and assists like as many people maybe want him to be. But then you look at Modric, and obviously we all know what he provides, right? He has a sort of eye for the pass, the finishing pass, all the sorts of leadership qualities he brings. And then Ardon is that sort of regista, that guy that can sit there and do a little bit of everything for you. So I think that this midfield offers a lot more balance, but I think it's also going to be interesting to see, what does Allegri do when he goes and wants to experiment with a 3-5-2? Does he go with a 4-3-3? Do we see a 3-4-3? I think that the way Allegri is going to go about that aspect of it should be very fascinating, because I think that, again, the midfield options we have in total feels like we have a little bit of a different look to put out there on a given match day based on the opponent, which I think is very crucial, because, the games against Real Madrid last year where the game was very open, Milan played really well. That's the game they like. But the games against a Cremonese at match day 1 where they're like, we'll sit back, we'll take our point match day 1 and bounce. So having a variance amount of profiles to sort of go at teams, and the profiles that we do have feel like it's a more refreshing take. It does feel as though that we are heading in a better direction to at least get a more stabilized midfield versus what we saw last year.
Yeah, once a week is it's going to be fascinating to see. I think someone like RLC could actually be a weapon off the bench.
Yeah.
There's a lot of criticism with him, but I don't think he's as bad as some would believe. Someone who's not as good as we would have liked him to be, Yunus Musah. This is only a matter of time before they have to do this. I literally forgot RLC when I was listing all the midfielders that we have. I mentioned we already play once a week. Like, if they make top 4, they're going back in the Champions League. There's more money there. So even if they wanted to reinvest in midfield, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can't keep all these guys. Adli, Benacer. We'll see what happens with those two. Adli seems they're both rejecting offers from Saudi. They want to stay in Europe. Adli's rejecting Sassuolo. The most concrete one, and I think that kind of makes sense for him long term for what his game is Musah to the Premier League, particularly Nottingham Forest. I don't think Musah is a midfielder, to be honest with you guys. I think this is a decent right wing back at best. I think with his qualities, he's a good ball carrier, good work rate, and that's as much as I can give you in terms of, just overall positive stuff from him. Final third decision making always leaves you head scratching. He's experienced for his age. I don't really like the argument of like, oh, Musah's only 22, he's only 23. He's like, well, he's actually a 6-year veteran at this point. He's played a lot of minutes. Been at Valencia, been at the national team, regardless of that standard. He's been at Milan for a couple years now. we saw that deal kind of fall through with Juve. Juve sold Miretti over to Napoli is what I'm thinking about. Napoli kind of rejected this. The rumors were that Forlani asked for 30 million, which is insane. I would have thought 25 million was more than enough.
Take it.
I know.
Yeah,
I think we were all like, please, bro.
Yeah,
Like,
just
if that's
take
true, if that's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have anything against Musah, guys, but I think it's just fairly obvious and easiest move. If you get anything around 20 million for this guy, pounds, euros, US dollars, whatever the currency is, you got to sell him. I think it's best for him. I think the Premier League invites his physicality and what he brings. It's a much more athletic league. It's probably the most athletic league in the world. I think it would work out for him. Forest would get an American within their side. I think wherever he goes, as long as Milan get around 20-something million for him, I think it's good business. It's just not going to work here. Marco, he stays another year, the value is in the tank. He's not going to be worth like anything at this point.
No, I agree. Yeah, I feel bad for the guy in a way too. I just feel like he's, I agree with you. You can't keep saying he's young, but he is on the younger side still. Right. And, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt too, because I think that players always prefer consistency from their club, which is something that we could not give him for the past couple of years. I mean, Allegri at this point is his fourth manager since he's been here, right? Like that's never a situation you want players to be in. But it just felt like, and you can't kind of Allegri in this, but it just felt like all three of them, although not here for very long, couldn't figure out where to put him. It just could, I always looked at him too as a wing back as well, a right wing back, and he played there a couple of times and he was pretty awful, honestly. Like in the midfield, he had some decent games where you could see that he has the physical attributes. He can take the ball, he can run with it. He's a pretty good dribbler of the ball, I feel like, and he's got decent pace to him. But to your point, like João Felix X, when it comes to the final third decision making, it's almost always wrong. And it's like, how do you teach a player to do that? Like you can't, because at that point it becomes instinct, right? So I do feel like when you put him on a Premier League team and it's more just physically demanding, which he can do, and his job is just as a right back, not to diminish any right backs here, but put a good ball in and work really hard. I think this move has to happen, but I do feel like the club let him down a little bit because we couldn't really give him that fair shot. And I felt bad even I was at the last match day in Milan against Monza. And I mean, there was a whole protest happening too, but he was getting whistled on the ball every time. Like when they announced his name, he's getting whistled too. Yeah. You just you feel a bit gutted for the guy, right? Because he does work hard. It's just hasn't been very good.
Failed investments like a Yunus Musah are the direct result of incompetence and improper planning from a squad build standpoint, right? Where you get a player in, you like a lot of the things that he does, but you don't really know how to kind of put them all together and shoehorn him into a specific role and give him direct responsibility, right? On top of that, you mentioned, Marco, right? Like multiple coaches, that's a recipe for disaster for any player, let alone a young player, right? And then the fact that you don't really know on a given match day where he's going to play. I mean, I think that the bigger issues that I saw with Yunus were more psychological, and when he was facing that pressure in a more deeper role, like when we were trying to experiment and throw out him in a double pivot, when he was given that sideways ball against teams that were pressing and we're like, okay, just run at him, make him make a pass. You ever see that in sports? Just make him like baseball, run out of the box, make him make a throw, right? And I think that that's kind of what it was with Yunus Musah, because you knew that he wasn't that sort of guy that was elegant on the ball, that's going to take it under pressure, find his way out of it, and then make the unlocking pass, and that breaks the lines and you're springing forward. I think that what Yunus needs is a coach that can, again, shoehorn him into a very specific role that is a little bit more forward, a little more catered and tailored to his build ability and his play style, which is getting the ball box to box, going forward, and then getting the ball to a player that is a little bit more technical, that is a little bit more creative, that can do all those things in the final third. That's where I think he's going to do really well. So I think that, again, we don't know how this is going to play out. I just truthfully really don't want this to be another case of Milan deny the Napoli offer, which would have been pretty much a permanent solution, whether it had been a loan with an obligation or just an outright purchase, to okay, we know Milan needs to get rid of him. Now it's a loan with an option. Now we're sitting here maybe having the same conversation next year, because we've seen this many times where Milan gets burnt, right? You send a player out on loan with option. He barely plays the first half of the season. Now you're going to get a player back on the depreciating value.
Sure.
So regardless of where he goes, I hope he does well, because I think, again, this is a player that I think served Milan well. I know obviously he has his limitations. We didn't hear anything about him in the media where, he was being moved around various different roles and wasn't given direct assignments, but he is still young, I think, with the right coach. And there's a reason why I think that maybe Conte really wanted him.
Yeah.
That you see a guy like Conte want him, who's very specific and very well drilled in what he asked for from his players. There's something there still. So I think that the player's still young, age is on his side, and hopefully he does, find his footing somewhere else and he does become a pretty good footballer.
I couldn't agree more. Just to add, sorry, Martino. Like,
no, keep going.
Yeah, like if Conte, like to your point, like Conte, there must be something, right? Even Forest last year had a great year, right? Like they're spending some money this season too, and they're not a bad side at all, right? Like they're seeing something.
It's like with McTominay, where you're like, why is he so hell bent on this player for such a big fee?
For sure. And it's almost like, I think Allegri tried too, right? Like I know it's preseason, only a handful of matches, but he did play. And like, it almost seems like Allegri is also seeing in training too, that can we get something out of this guy? Like it's a bit of a confusing one, but I agree with you. I really do believe there is something with Yunus Musah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens. More Premier League related stuff. We're not going to bring up the Chukwueze Fulham thing. We'll see if that has more legs in the coming weeks. But as of right now, that's just kind of been a floated rumor for a while. But another one that has kind of been linked, and this happened last year as well, I believe, Malik Thiaw in Newcastle. It's getting late, guys. This is very late into the window. Here's the thing with me. I think Thiaw could benefit from Allegri's system. I think the best version we saw of Malik Thiaw at Milan was under Pioli in that Champions League run, where Milan were sitting a lot deeper. Thiaw doesn't have the recovery speed of playing a high line. He's also not the best one-on-one defender, but I think he's slowly improving. That has, for me, a large part to do with his inconsistency of playing time, especially at that age, at that position. It's so hard to get replaced in and out. Center backs just don't play like that. They're not midfielders where you just plug and replace one. It just never happens. We know it. We saw Matteo Gabbia go on loan for 6 months and he's reborn as a pretty respectable player. That's kind of the issue here. There's 4 center backs within the squad, essentially. Pavlovic, Thiaw, Tomori, and Gabbia. Selling Thiaw this late in the window leaves your margin for error that much smaller, because Milan then have to replace him within a couple of weeks. And that's depending upon when this deal were to get over the line, if that's the case. Floated rumors around 30 million euro. I agree with Matt and what you said. I'm not if right now I hold leverage. I know you sold Alexander Isak to Liverpool. You have some money to play with. I want 35 million. If it's not met, then we're not interested. I think if Milan move forward with that, you have to be incredibly aggressive for who the replacement is. And you have to move swiftly, because at this point in time, when you're floating names like Giovanni Leone, when there's names like Comuzzo involved, okay, yeah, they could probably afford to get that player at that point in time. But here is the ultimate question that we see every single time related to Milan news. Milan finally have the money to pay for a player, but the club that they're paying is looking for a replacement. Where do Parma go? Where do Fiorentina go at that point in time to find a replacement for this guy? If this deal gets over the line, you're suddenly looking at what we could say August 20th almost. So basically the start of the Serie A season, you're telling a club like Fiorentina or Parma, yeah, you need to get a center back replacement in because we're taking your best guy. That's difficult to pull off. Yeah. That's the kind of issue I have with this deal manifesting late into the window. I'm not saying any of these deals are impossible, but we've kind of seen, Marco, where Parma have been on this Leone situation. Yeah, you either pay us up front now or we're good with going to a Premier League club for this. We don't know what Leone's desires are as a player. I think personally for him, you hold out for one of the top 3 Serie A clubs. I think if Juve is interested in you, Inter or Milan, you go to one of those 3. As far as, just real quick, just on the Leone thing, the interest is very funny. Inter could barely get a deal over the line for Lookman. We could barely get a deal over the line for Jashari. And Juve's offer was the most laughable slap in the face thing I've ever seen. We're going to offer you less money up front, but you get to keep your player for another year. So, which is I just want to attack Juve here for a second because nobody likes to rip. Because nobody wants to rip on Juve the same way people want to rip on Milan. Juve are the same situation as Milan with a little bit more money. They're just as stupid. So, like, for people to never rag on them is like the funniest thing. I know their supporter fan base, they rip on Juve and the way they've been managed. I get it. Please. The way they're ripped in the papers, it's night and day difference. Milan get more shit than Juve ever do. Juve thinking that they could get Leone by offering less money and to allow Parma to keep their own player for another year is the biggest slap in the face offer I've ever seen. Because why would Parma make this deal? They're going to take less money when they know they could get more money elsewhere, and they get to keep their player when they could just do that anyways.
How much less was it?
How do they benefit from that? I don't like. It's mind-boggling to see how Juve operate with their logic, and why that deal is not going to get done for them. If you have a thought on that, you could go ahead. But to jump back to Thiaw, it's too late in the window for you guys for this move, or you'll gladly take $35 million for someone who kind of similar to Musah. He has like a down season, then the value is really decreasing greatly.
Yeah. You want to go, Matt? Or
yeah, I'll go. So I think there's a lot kind of to break down with a potential Malik Thiaw exit at this stage of the summer, which again at the time of recording, August 5th, is let's bring it back to the beginning of the market where Milan were more than willing to sell him for 25 million to Como. Player rejected the Como move, so he clearly has ambition in the sense of he wants to play. If I'm going to make a move from Milan, I want to play in the Champions League or it's Premier League, or maybe I heard Leverkusen tossed around. So like he wants to make a move that's not a lateral or a step back, at least in terms of status of the club, right? Which I don't blame. I think at this stage of the summer, as you mentioned, Martino, if you're going to sell Malik Thiaw, who maybe for all his faults and his issues that he has had, he's still a young player that at least you have some familiarity with, the profile, what you're going to maybe get, and that there is some growing pains, but there is potential in him.
Yeah.
This was a player that was linked to Newcastle last year, and I think Milan rejected an offer 30, 35. I think that was kind of the figure that I saw thrown around. And people were saying, take the money and run. Some people are saying, keep him. He's actually going to have a big year this year.
I said take the money. Yeah.
I think that when you look at the way Milan were sort of a little wishy-washy, in my opinion, on this position this summer, that's where I think that they lost me a bit, because I think that you looked at some of the options out there, and this is what Matteo brought up last episode. You had Ghilardi, who just went to Roma for 10, 15 million, not a big fee, right? You just had Diego Coppola, who went to Brighton for 10 to 12 million.
That was crazy.
So those are players that I think that if you told any Milan fan, say, hey, we're going to sell a Malik Thiaw, who's a player we bought for 4 to 5 million from Schalke years ago when Paolo Maldini was the director, and we're going to sell him for 25 to 30, and we're going to get a player in for 10 to 12, and you're going to roll the dice, and it's an Italian international, someone who at least is in the league and has known the league, I think Milan fans would have been on board for that. I do want to point out the fact that Parma have been around the block when it comes to young, highly sought after central defenders that they know have, the sort of chokehold on the entirety of Serie A, right? And big clubs, right? Because when you throw 40 million on the kid's head and you say, this is what we want, you're basically saying Juve, Milan, Inter, Napoli, come get him. Mm-hmm. Napoli, you're not going to get them. They got Bucuma. They're fine there. They got Buongiorno last year.
Yep.
They sold Parma, Bastoni to Inter in 2017 or 2018 for 31 million. And then they let him stay, I believe, at Parma for a season or two before they brought him back. So they know what they're doing. They know. They're holding out for a big number. It would be very surprising to see Milan, even if they did sell Malik Thiaw for 30, go in for Leone, because if they're asking for 40 million, you're basically saying, okay, fine, put up another 40 million, even though you just did basically that same thing for Jashari. So I think that, in my opinion, the way I see this is Milan are going to throw an outrageous number out there. If 35-40, Newcastle, if they match it, you can't say no to that, because you already sold Tijani. Tijani had his price. I'm selling Malik Thiaw for 35-40. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
It's a fee that's around what Como offered. I think I have to think long and hard about that for all the reasons you guys have just mentioned, that now you're having to go and get someone brand new, bring him in, get him adapted, and you're going to have to do it in 2 weeks.
And they accepted 25, correct? Like
Como
they had
accepted
agreed
25.
with Como.
Yeah, no, we accepted 25 from Como. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I feel like we only got a player like Malik Thiaw because I forget who made the comments. This was years ago when we signed him, but someone said it's too expensive to sign young Italian defenders in the Serie A like that. This is why you go out and you sign Malik Thiaw for 7-8 million, whatever it was back in the day, because Italian clubs, a lot of them are like not paying astronomical fees for these kids that are like 18, 19 years old, right? So it would be funny to sell Malik Thiaw. Like you sign him for the 7-8 million to flip him for 35, 40, a couple of years later to then go get the 18-year-old Italian central defender that you want. It's just funny that the workaround there. But I think I agree with you, Matt, where it's like 35 to 40, you take that money. Although I do like Malik Thiaw, and I think he's such a confidence player, but he is a center back in our team right now that has characteristics that a lot of other ones don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like Pavlovic and Gabbia and Tomori, they can't pass like him. They can't kind of tempo set like him in that back line there. So I think he does offer you things that we currently don't have. And to sell that, like have a familiar player, get rid of him to bring in someone like Leone, who's only played a handful of games in Serie A, who's so young, like that would be quite a bit of a gamble. And to start the year with Pavlovic, Gabbia, Tomori, to me, only them as being like your bona fide defenders. I don't like the sound of that. I don't know. I think it's. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry. Getting Leone for a fee close to 40 million would feel very similar to what Milan did when they got Alessio Romagnoli for 25 million years ago, where it's like young prospect, you love everything about him. He checks off every single box. There's no doubts about the profile. And you're saying, this is the guy, we're getting him. 35, 40, like this is a cornerstone central defender. And we're going to get him now because if we wait 6 months, he's done. He's gone. We're not getting him. So I think that's how you have to really approach this. And I think, again, and I want to keep hammering home this point, because we know that for all the additions that Milan have made in recent weeks and how we tend to like them, they still have a lot of work to do on the sales side for players that have zero future at this club.
Yeah.
And when you are poor in assembling a squad and you buy poorly and you can't sell players that don't really have a lot of market appeal, this is where you get stuck. Because wouldn't it be great if Milan were in a position where they say, man, we sold everybody, we pretty much have what we want, and now all of a sudden we're sitting on maybe 25 to 30, 40 million, and we could say, you know what? Leone's the last guy. He's the last piece of the puzzle. You get a young, future Azzurri defender where we can plug and play. Well, not plug and play, he's still growing, but bring in a guy that, fits the league, fits what we're trying to do, and you go and get that guy now. Wouldn't that be something? But again, I just don't see this club operating in that way, because I think Parma are in a position where they're like, bro, it's 40 or nothing, because we know what we got here. And that's how much they back the player. So
I think it's if you get 35 million offered for Malik Thiaw, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And like Marco was saying, and I agree with you, because I am okay with keeping him in a sense under Allegri, seeing what happens. I won't be upset at that. I think there still is upside there. However, if we look at his entire body of work at Milan, and you say to me, largely, he kind of only had a couple of good months at the club, right? Regardless of situation, managers, this and that. And you still said to yourself, 6-7 million euro investment years ago, we saw everything that transpired. Somehow this guy's value got to 35 million. I'm selling him.
It's true.
I am not thinking about it. I'm sorry to him, but 35 million is a coup. What I have accepted, so truth be told, I don't trust any center back on this team.
Yeah.
Do I feel a little bit better about them under Allegri? Absolutely, I do. I think Tomori can get back to what he used to be. I think if Tomori doesn't have as much responsibility pushing up and he has a decent enough partner, I think Tomori is still an above average center back in Serie A. Whether he gets back to that is a different story. But 35 million for Thiaw.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, if you get that money, you have to be aggressive for who you go after. And you can't take your time, just be like, I don't know, maybe this guy, maybe we go in for him. You have to be aggressive for it. And you have to make sure that that guy that you choose is somebody that you want to get over the line Maybe they send a youth player back over there. Maybe it's a combination of like a midfielder that they have, one of those, like if it's Adley, 35 million. So like, I'm just spitballing names out here. We also don't know what that young manager from Arsenal would want within his squad here, which is also a very interesting situation for them. Yeah, I don't know. I think Milan would just have to be aggressive for it. So yeah, I think we'll move on there. So a couple more rumors that we'll get into before we wrap up the episode. Zachary Athekame. So apologies if I got that wrong. We all discussed prior to the episode if that was the accurate pronunciation of his name. Guys, this is very kind of predictable price-wise of where they're going here. Young boys right back. Deal it looks like it's accelerating. Yeah. So this looks like this will be the right back that they purchase. So around 8 to 9 million euro. This is very interesting what they're doing with the fullbacks, because initially it was Archie Brown, left back, similar figure for what we're paying for Athekame here. And then they rechanneled for Estupinian. It looked like Archie Brown, Doué on the right, but they obviously couldn't get the figure for Doué. Then they switch it up. The left back was worth more money. The right back is a little bit cheaper. Alex Jimenez's future is obviously up in the air. It really seems like Real Madrid want to bring him back and have him a part of their squad when Milan eventually, develops him for them. Listen, truth be told, I don't know a damn thing about the guy. I never saw him play. I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on him. I don't really have much left to say. This looks just like an upside sort of deal here. Marco, do you have any information on him? Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, I did a little research.
Okay, here we go. Go for it.
Yeah, so there's so I think the move, like you said, it is interesting that you put it that way too, because it was the Archie Brown to Estupinian. They spent more on left back, which I think honestly made the most sense, because if you didn't bring in Estupinian, you're left with Bartasaghi only, who I don't think is quite ready just yet. But we've seen Alex Jimenez on the right side, who can do a job there, all right, and he's more of he does like to get forward more. He's almost more of a winger. He's not physically demanding, but pretty tricky. Can put a good cross in. And this guy, Athekame, mind you, in the Swiss league, and I'm not going to sit here and claim I watched the Swiss league. I don't. But I was watching highlights and I saw some of his stats. He is definitely defense first.
Yeah.
Which is different. Which is different to Alex Jimenez too, which is why I like him, because I feel like depending on the match coming up, you can kind of set up a different way. If you have to lock in a game, you can bring him on. He's still young. He's only 20. And, he was, again, from the Swiss league, not to disrespect him, but it is a step up again to go to the Serie A. The stats I was seeing, he's like first in slide tackles in the league. Second in completed crosses, something like that too. So some good stats there, but it feels like that slide tackling stat is more just the fact that he's crazy quick. And he's usually the one to try and to try and stop transitions, right? I think there's tons of upside here. I think the price is really favorable too. So I do like this move, but I think Milan fans have to understand, if he does come in, that this is by no means a finished product. He is just a prospect.
I think, I think an Athekame acquisition, it kind of feels like reminiscent of those budgetary restriction summers we had with Paolo Maldini, where it's like a name comes out of nowhere. They must have had this guy that's like, okay, this is one of the names that will get him on a cheap. And in this current age, 8 to 9 million for a young prospect, if he has a pretty good first year at Milan and he plays, and then it's kind of something where you can say, okay, we can flip this player for a profit. It's a low risk, in my opinion. I know people want the sort of Doué type of profile where he's a little more of a known commodity. He got the Doué last name, like, okay, Strasbourg, like this 30 million price tag. That's the guy we need to be doing, because that's how we're going to raise this overall squad to get to where it wants to be. But I think that the fact that they're going still young in certain departments, I think they kind of see it as though, okay, fine, if worst case scenario, we buy this player and he is okay, maybe we can still flip him for 6-7 million to a team quickly. But if he does play well, the youth is on his side. Now this is a player that might be able to go for 20 plus if he does do all the things as far as his development, and we all do everything on our side to the player, right? Because it's it takes two here, right? Like Milan can't do any disservices to any more young players than they already have in recent years, right?
Sure.
As you just mentioned with Yunus Musah. Unlike Musah, the price tag isn't as lofty. So the expectations there for coming in won't be that high, and he'll be in a more rotational setting. So, I mean, again, I can't speak on, strengths, weaknesses, give you the whole profile, the background, but I think I'd be content with a signing like this for the fee, provided we do something a little bit more upper tier in the striker area, or maybe in the central defense.
Oh, you'll love the striker names.
Let's say, for example, and then we'll get into the striker and probably finish there. Let's say we go, hey, you know what? We're not going to spend 20 plus on a Doué. We're going to scale it back. We're going to spend around 8 to 9 on another fullback. And you know what? That little extra, we're going to see if that maybe can help us get a deal over the line for a striker that maybe we really, truly like and need. Because I don't think that is going away. I do think truly Milan will get another striker. I don't think it's going to be Okafor and Jimenez, despite what reports are saying about Okafor and how Allegri seems to be maybe second guessing, his future. So we'll wait and see. I think we got. When's the market close exactly? Do we know the date on that? Is that 31st?
Well, it's like a little different, like with buying and selling, because if other leagues are like open,
right? If you're selling
players to them.
I do want to add too, just profile wise, compare, like if those were the two options that I think went furthest along, was the Doué, and now we have Athekame, who's pretty close. Athekame, not quality wise, just strictly profile, like the characteristics. He's much more Allegri style defender than Doué would have ever been.
Yeah.
So, which is what people are kind of asking for because of Estupiñán's qualities. So Estupiñán is a bit more defensive than Thiaw, but he's primarily better offensively, like he more so compared to the other profiles. I think they're looking for a difference in profiles at both fullback positions. I don't think they want both of their fullbacks being offensive-oriented players, which is obviously pertaining to what Allegri would want. Now,
wow.
I mean, like, yeah, exactly. Like, you just see the names. So I'm going to go start with the first one. I'm not sure if anyone saw my very irritated Darwin Núñez video yesterday. I think if you're buying into these Darwin Núñez reports, you're a very naive person. You're someone who doesn't really understand the full scope of the club, and that's not your fault. If any of you actually believed that they would be interested in at least 50 million euro for any player, let alone a guy like Darwin Núñez for the striker position, you're out of your mind. You're out of your... This player, without a doubt, to me, is going to Saudi. If there's no other like Premier League clubs that want to like pay up, give up the money for him, and he's comfortable staying there, he's going to Saudi. Milan is not going. Does anyone here, if Darwin is even interested in Saudi, that means he wants money. And so when the negotiations come down to Milan and a Saudi club in 2025, you tell me who's going to win. Okay? That's done with the Darwin situation. I'm not going to talk about that further. The other guy, Dusan Vlahovic, gets the most money in Serie A. We talked about it last week with Bonetti. Yeah. I've talked about this multiple times. It's not going to happen at the way I want it, which would be I'm okay with 4 million net per season. That would be a third of the money that he gets currently. I understand all this. I understand it's unlikely. This is not going away. Juve's situation at the striker position is also not going away, where they want to get Kolo Muani over the line. They have to figure out what to do with Dusan. He has 1 year left on his contract. There's the potential of the termination. There's also the potential of 10 to 20 million, whatever the rumored number is floated. But Milan know, very much like the Jashari deal, I think with Vlahovic, they have leverage. Yeah. They know he's not extending there. They know that he doesn't want to go to a Saudi club, a Turkish club that's willing to pay for that. We're seeing United, I believe it is, moving in.
They were offered apparently Dusan, but they were just like, nah, bro.
But I'm saying they are moving. Who's moving in for Sesko, by the way?
Newcastle and United. Newcastle and United.
Yeah. So United also haven't sold any of their strikers. Those options for Dusan, right, in terms of money, places to go and play, they're basically drying up. Yeah. And I think where he was with Allegri at a point with Juve and where he is right now in his career, you could still go to a big club. I know where we're at right now. But I think this is just going to happen. Feasibility for Milan, the cut that he's going to have to take, and he knows it. He's still able to play at a big club. And if he knows he's not taking big money elsewhere, where else are you going? Honestly. I think they're going to sign Dusan Vlahovic to be the other striker on this team. I think that it's a striker that Allegri is familiar with, that he would like. I don't think Dusan is going to change any of his negatives that he has in his game in terms of build-up play, his passing, any of that. I get that. I don't think that's going to happen. However, what I do think can change for him is confidence and playing within a side that gives him new life. Am I saying we're going to see the best version of him from Fiorentina? No. What I do think is this is going to be a capable goal scorer of at least getting 12 goals within Serie A. I think he's capable of that, especially with the creators that Milan have within their side. Marco, I've said this before, and I know, Matt, you've heard me say this plenty of times at this point. I think with the creators that he has at Milan around him are far better than the ones that he's had at Juve. And I just think that with his confidence and change of scenery, he'll have a better time at Milan than he did at Juve for multiple reasons. And being with someone like Allegri, who likes him and seems to want him in this situation, I think that bodes well for confidence. I'm not saying he's going to reach that ceiling of a 70, 80 million euro striker for whatever they signed him for. I'm just saying a backup striker at Milan getting paid decent, well, good money. We already paid Tammy Abraham $6 million last year.
That's crazy,
even if it was just a loan deal. It's basically what you're going to be paying Dusan Vlahovic. Do you want to see Dusan Vlahovic in Milan covers, Marco?
Do I want to? No.
No, want to was a bad phrasing.
Yeah, no. Do
Would
I
you
want
be
to?
okay
No.
with it, given the circumstances?
Yeah, I think what you're saying at this point too is like it's August 5th right now, and the season's starting soon. At this point, Santi Jimenez just got there. He will be the starting striker for us, I think, unless you were talking loosely about maybe Okafor will get that kind of nod. So
start like the first two games, yeah.
Maybe, right? So like I think Santi's the guy. Like there's definitely worse options, but in my what I'm confused about is the salary, right? Because are we saying that he joins us, he cuts his salary in half, like we pay him 6 and then Juve pays him the rest, or is it a contract cut?
Well, that's
a new contract with us.
Yeah, so that's kind of been floated of like he goes there for the year or something.
Yeah.
And like they just get rid of him. There's no termination. I'm not sure what the figures are because Juve might stand to pay more money in total if they were to just terminate his contract. I believe it'd be kind of something like that. That's one of the options that's out there outside of Milan just paying for him.
Yeah.
And then he signs a new contract that's half salary.
You know what?
Around $6 million net.
Sure. I don't like the move. I got to be honest. I don't. Okay. I don't like the player. I don't think he's very good. He's certainly not worth 12 million a year, and I don't think he's worth 6 million a year. To be honest with you, I just don't.
Yeah, I agree.
I also look at him and I see a very similar player to Santi Jimenez as well, and like I think that things that Santi's not very good at, Vlahovic is also not very good at. And I think the team is doing so well, kind of adding pieces around the pitch that offer you different things, where in this case, we're going to be left with 2 strikers who more or less do the same things. One you just signed for 35 million only a handful of months ago, who like really hasn't gotten his fair shot yet. So we're kind of in this weird spot where hasn't gotten his fair shot, but when he has played, he hasn't been overly impressive. So you can't really rely on him yet. Right. So I get the Vlahovic deal in the sense of you're bringing someone in who knows the league, knows the manager. So in that sense, it does make sense, but I don't know. I liked so many other profiles that were linked to the club. I really love the Mateta. I know that was such a loose rumor, of course, but I thought that Mateta was such a great idea for this team and like what he can offer that Santi can't and how good he is. I think his price was like 30 to 40 as well, which, if you want to spend that on a striker, I think you're better off spending it on someone like him. But I don't like it. But I think if it does happen, I can find a way to get on board is where my head's at.
I think the Milan fans that are on board with Dusan Vlahovic are falling in love with what they thought he could be or could have been when making that move from Fiorentina to Juventus, because at that point in time, Milan were also linked with him, right? There was Martino, when we were doing the podcast for Milan Reports and we had Vito and he was giving us info, 50 to 60 million, right? Like Milan really liked him a couple years ago. And obviously he hasn't taken that next step. And you've seen that, right? At the time of him making that move to Juventus,
It's him and Chiesa.
I told Pet for Say to Play, shout out to Pet, that I like the player, but I think this move is too sudden. I don't think he's that type of guy. I don't think he's a 70, 80 million striker. And I think I've been proven pretty correct on that, because I think that there's a lot of kind of factors that come into this, right? You know, he made this big move to Juventus. You naturally want to see the player take the next step, more consistent in front of goal, you know, all those sorts of, you know, maybe the off-field things, the friction, put that aside and start delivering consistently. Because I think, again, there was some elements of Zlatan in Dusan. When I saw him make the move from Juventus, I was like, all right, like, this guy's a gamer. He's got the mentality. He's going to take the next step. And he hasn't. He's misses clear-cut goals, which is obviously not something that we're looking for. We need someone who's dependable, right? So in my head, the more I think about the striker situation, the more I feel a little bit more comfortable, or would be more comfortable going with a player like a Mateta, or someone in that 27 to 28-year-old range, where 3 to 4 years out of him, maybe you sell him after that. But he's someone that gives you a little more certainties, more assurances as far as the goals are concerned, because I don't want to get another striker on top of Santi, who, guys, he hasn't been here more than 6 months. He still has to adapt himself to another coach. And now what does that tell him? That you're getting another striker in here from a club in this league, and you're not even giving him a fair shot. How does that destroy his confidence? So and on top of that, I feel like we're misprofiling him, because Todd is saying they want a Giroud type striker, and this guy doesn't feel like Giroud to me at all.
No. Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's very odd. I think that this situation will play itself out in the next week or so, in my opinion, because I think that you have to start getting the framework of a deal together now if you're going to make it happen. But I think, again, if Dusan is really focused on revitalizing his career and getting back on track and playing for a top club, I think that he needs to put ego aside, reduce his wages, and say, you know what, this is Milan. I have a really good opportunity in front of me under a really good coach that I have good rapport with. You know what, I'll take a reduction in wages. Or, as Matteo mentioned last week, he can say, you know what, I'm not taking a wage reduction. You're going to pay me whatever I'm owed. I signed the contract. And worst case, I go and choose my next destination next summer. So that's going to tell us a lot. If this is a player that is truly interested in his playing career and being reborn in that sense, we will see it in the reduction in his wages. And if he doesn't, we kind of know what he's about at this point in his career.
I think what you're saying is that it's what you said, Martino. It's going to happen, because I just feel like it's crunch time now, and like, what other names are being this heavily linked to us?
It's also like this.
Where else do we go? We have to sign somebody. We cannot go into the year now with getting rid of
the reports of, you know, loosely not loving Santi Jimenez. Like, out of like, I never thought that they were going to sell him immediately. I thought that was bullshit. Yeah. However, Allegri wanting his own guy at striker, that's very plausible and believable. Yeah. When you're loaning out Camarda like that, I just think it's the overall, from me, question and projection of the striker situation years from now, not just like what we're doing this season. Because sure, it's going to be Dusan, Santi, most likely, but those are guys still in their mid-20s. Camarda is still a teenager. He comes back next season. You have Dusan, you have Santi, and then him. Like, what is the idea there? Yep. Are you selling off one of those strikers? I just think that there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of thinking to go in that. Again, multiple competitions, you're going to have that. But where do you sit there and the justification of playing a teenage kid? We'll see what Camarda does at Lecce. The justification of playing him when you invested all that money in Santi, all the wages in Dusan Vlahovic, because at least it's going to be half. And then the way Redbird operate, you're sitting there saying to yourselves, where is that consistent playing time for this young striker? I question that. I wonder how that's going to work. We'll see what Allegri's flexibility is, but that's also a while from now. So we'll see what happens. I think Dusan's going to be signed. I just think for everybody involved, it makes the most sense at this moment. I'm not saying he's at the top of my list. There have been links to, I think there was a Genk striker and then like a French league striker. Yeah. They were all like kind of like loose links. I don't know those players, so I can't really comment on them. And then I think was it last year? I think did he go to Porto? It was that striker between Porto and Atletico, Samu Omaridian or whatever his name was. He was kind of it was like 2025. Like, I don't know. It's kind
of all over. Is Morata even gone yet? Morata's not even officially.
He's staying at he's staying at Galatasaray because they want a double striker formation with him and Osimhen. So instead of the 10 million up front from Como, which they wanted, they thought they would get Morata. They're going to just get, I think it's around like 6 million and then other change because the deal is a full year in January because they sent them out in January last year.
Yeah.
It's like all over the place. It's
just a weird situation right now.
That January transfer window, people got to understand that affected like things for a while. So we'll see. All right. Final topic, gents. So we get wrapped up. Thank you guys so much for sticking through to the end of the podcast if you've been here. So this one, listen, call me a sucker. I was smiling when I saw this.
Yeah.
I like whatever he ends up doing, I don't care. I love this man. I will follow him into the gates of hell. I don't give a shit. This is an icon of the club. Galliani is 80. Like, just straight up. Like, I'm not being like an age of whatever. He's 80 years old. I love the guy. The guy, there isn't a bigger Milan fan alive. And that includes Paolo Maldini. I'll be straight up with you. I don't think there's a bigger fan than Adriano Galliani of this club. So basically, to give a little background to this, the club wants to bring him back. Monza is basically being sold effectively. They did what they could. An American group is taking them over. Shocker. It's an epidemic in Italy. And with that, Milan have a very tumultuous stadium situation. Ta-da! Been going on for 15 plus years, whatever the number is. I've read that Zlatan was the person that wanted to get Galliani back in. There's been a secret meeting with Jerry Cardinale and Galliani to have him come back. Ferlani is somebody that wants him back. And ultimately, it's to replace Paolo Scaroni. And to be quite honest with you, in terms of upgrades, and I'm including players here, I don't think there's ever been a bigger upgrade in club history if you could do this. Like the amount of uselessness coming out of Paolo Scaroni's mouth. And I just mean, and I am here to be rude about it. And I talk to people at the club and like who have worked with him. The quotes are literally this: what is this guy good for? What does he do? And that is insane to me because this is a guy who's held a board seat for years now. Back from when Elliott initially took over, he's got his dirty fingers around in this stadium stuff. He wants to keep it with San Siro and that project and how much of a disaster that's been and how Salah has been involved in that. And Marco, you know the politics, guys. You know the politics over in Italy. They don't make sense. Bureaucratic issues. But if there's one guy who knows it and could maybe fix this on a level, it's Adriano Galliani. I think they just need a stadium resolution done. Whether or not we're moving forward. And something has to happen because Euro 2032, everybody. So put it quite simply. UEFA wants a stadium in Milan because it's a major city. They want something that is up to code. San Siro is not. And if you've been there, holy shit, they don't even have correct bathrooms. The bathroom is a hole in the floor.
Yeah.
If you have not been there, a hole in the floor. I don't have to explain further.
Yeah.
They need a modern stadium. Galliani is probably one of these political bureaucratic figureheads, as we know who he is, could maybe help get something adjusted. I'm not saying a stadium will get done with Galliani, but to move something along is highly likely with him. What do we think about this, guys? Because like it's just largely for me, I think it's just you're bringing him in to do one thing. I'd rather hear Galliani give comments on the status of the club. Even if I have to listen about Thiago Silva staying 99%, I'd rather him say that than what Scaroni is commenting on a Jashari deal.
Yeah.
I know they're both full of shit. I just rather hear it from Galliani.
You're a Galliani stan, man. I can't hate it. No, I can see that. I can see that. Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing though he'll be coming back as the director of football. Is that what that's kind of the role, or like it's going to replace Scaroni just one for one? Like I've heard so many different things.
Well, yeah, there you go.
I guess I think you put it pretty clearly. Is like if it's strictly Galliani or Scaroni, of course. Like, what are we talking about here? I think I'll just add to that. It will. I think it does a lot. It can do a lot in terms of just maybe calming our fan base down a little bit. Familiar faces coming back, a legend's coming back, and just like I don't know. I think it's maybe a little bit of saving face too from our ownership right now of like just trying to get someone back that's familiar. I'm not as pumped about this as you are, but I think it'd be pretty cool. And I think you tweeted this is like he comes back, he gets the stadium stuff done, and he finally retires at the age of 85.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like whatever it is. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah.
Italian work this much ever.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just say that. This would be quite a story though if it does happen.
Matt.
Yeah, I think
romance.
For sure. I mean, I think, it was his birthday was last week. And obviously this is a guy that's been at the heart of Milan in some of their historic years. So I think that, I can't even diminish what he's meant to this club. And you can't tell the history of Milan without Adriano Galliani, right? Him and Berlusconi, like all the moves they made and, the high profile names against, expectation, right? Where even in those moments where Milan were in their dark years and we need a striker or we need this player, we were somehow able to get deals done just because of Adriano Galliani showing up at their place and knocking on their door. I always revert back to the Matteo Destro situation where he knocked on Mattia's door basically and the media was swarming him and he was trying to buzz in. It was one of those types of buildings. And this was him doing this for Matteo Destro. This wasn't him doing this for Diego Maradona or Messi or Ronaldo. Like the lengths he went to serve Milan, I think people in the more modern era that are still young Milan fans maybe don't quite know it because he's been out of the picture for a decade now. And even before that, when Milan were in their down years, he wasn't able to make that sort of seismic impact and the big signings like of previous years. So if he's able to come back and give us some sort of recognition, brand recognition, when you look at Milan, you see him in the stands watching the games, him getting excited, all these sorts of things, then I think that, yes, you bring him back, regardless of what his role is, because truth of the matter is this, Martino, you mentioned it with Scaroni. We've mentioned it many times with Zlatan. I don't need to know what his role is because there's several members at this club and this hierarchy that we don't even know what they do. So who cares? Bring back Adriano Galliani. He can sit in the stands for all I care. Yeah. In my opinion, he can sit in the stands for all I care. And man, he's an ambassador. Fine, done.
Great,
cool,
fine with me. So yeah, it would be great. And I think there is something to be said about getting someone that living that knows Milan the way he knows Milan. Yeah. And I think that still that presence within the club is still very much needed because right now it's very much fractured, in my opinion, with Zlatan. I think that sort of the intention behind bringing him back, I thought meant well in the moment. But I think a lot of what's been unknown about his role and what he does on the day-to-day and his involvement in this sort of disaster that we've been in, I think you need someone like Adriano Galliani as that sort of no type figure that's going to look around and say, like, this isn't working. We need to do this. We need to do this. We need to do that. He knows Milan better than anybody right now at this club.
Yeah. It's a good point, actually, when you brought up like the fact that he is one of the only ones that just knows Milan like how we all talk about those glory days, right? Like, and I thought about this when I saw the Luka Modric interview like yesterday, whatever day it was too. And like, I had a thought because he was talking about how when he grew up, he loved Milan. Milan was huge where he was growing up, right? And Boban, right? And I was like, how many of those players do we have left that are going to remember Milan like that, right? Like Modric is 40 and he remembers Milan like that growing up. But like you sign a player now who's 20 years old, like does Zachary Athekame go, man, I remember growing up and seeing Abate, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just not like it, and that's why we're moving further from that. And I do think that like having someone like Galliani come back and like do his best with the current restraints of what this club is right now to try and like get some of that back, I think would be exciting.
Bro, we live in North America. The amount of people who like the Premier League bandwagon on it very late, how many of them I work with and I love them all. They come up to me. It's like, weren't you guys used to be pretty good, right? I'm just,
they don't know,
how
man. They don't know.
It's the most infuriating.
You get asked if you like
we
AC.
can do a whole.
It's like someone going up to Cindy Crawford when she's 70. It's like, you used to be a supermodel, right? It's like, get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah,
like,
we can do a whole podcast on the Serie A and all that stuff. But like, it's true. It's like I get asked now, like, oh, what club do you support? I go, I support Milan. They go, what's your Prem team? I go,
bro,
I don't really have a Prem team.
They don't get it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, bro. I got one in Spain.
Yeah.
Holland. Get the fuck.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, real quick, want to say well wishes to Franco Baresi, who's going under an operation. He's not feeling too well. I don't know the exact extent of it. I'm not a doctor, but we're just hoping for a full recovery for him. Speaking of Milan icons, that is one of the biggest icons of all time. One of 2 players to ever have his jersey retired by the club. Number 6, very nice guy. So best wishes to him. And that is pretty much it on the rumor mill topics for this episode. We greatly appreciate everybody that tunes in and checks it out. Subscribe to us here at That Milan Podcast, That Milan Pod, obviously everywhere on social media. Marco, you've been an amazing guest once again. Love talking to you. We love your videos. Your videos are fantastic. You're booming right now on Instagram as well, because obviously you're big time on TikTok. Your Instagram is blowing up. It's doing great. We're very happy for all the content that you're doing. You're bringing to Serie A. You're one of the best people for it, on top of just Milan in general. So any big plans coming up for this season, a little bit different content idea wise that you have in the works that you want people to know about and where they could go follow you?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me back. This was tons of fun again. And I do feel like last time I was on here, Milan beat Madrid. That was the game we were talking about, no? I feel like, listen, I think I'm good news. I mean, I bring some good news because, like, we go Milan beat Madrid. Now we sign Jashari, so just put that out there. But
we'll be body now because of it.
Okay, knock on wood. But I mean, it's going to be a good season. I mean, like you said, the socials are taking off, and it's really amazing that we're building a bit of a Milan Serie A army here, and hopefully doing more collabs with you guys, of course. And
in dire times, mind you.
Yeah, there's some great content creators here in Canada too, man. I'm like, you guys know Lex, of course, and the guys over at Footy Culture doing their podcast too. Right? So Kush is around here too. So hoping to just do a lot more collabs as we move on, and this should be hopefully a fantastic season. So thank you all again. If you want to follow me, everything is at me, Marco G, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want, I'll be there. Thank you all again.
Of course. Sant'Angelo, same as usual.
Yeah.
I mean, Lumber. Wait,
yeah.
No, actually, it's a new platform.
Actually, so I'm on a new platform, guys.
Yeah.
I feel like an old head. Like I'm finally getting on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
You guys can actually follow me on Instagram, Matt_Santa22. It looks like there's another, Matt Santa out there that took that original handle. So I had to kind of go with something a little bit different. 22 for Kaka. That's my favorite player.
There you go.
So some of the similar clips that we produce for this podcast that we share on our socials, you'll see some of those there. Some more unique, personal content I'll post as well when it comes to this. Isn't an OnlyFans, guys. This isn't an OnlyFans. But some more like topical stuff that Martino does. He's kind of like my mentor when it comes to IG content. Marco as well. You guys do great jobs with that stuff. So more of that stuff will be on my Instagram. It's going to kind of go hand in hand with my Twitter, which I know many of you guys listening follow that. So I thank you there. And as Marco just mentioned, looking forward to the season, and of course looking forward to building this community, because again, I always say this, without you guys, we're not sitting here and we're not having these conversations. We're not reaching the mass amount of people that we are. So great day to be a Milan fan. We got a good signing here. So let's keep that momentum going, and hopefully we have a great season.
Yep. And again, just give us 5-star reviews on your audio platforms that you listen on, Spotify, Apple. Again, a little bit of a lengthy one here, but I'm sure it was well worth it. Plenty of topics. Ended up being one of the longer ones when we thought we didn't have that much to talk about. So, Marco, thank you so much once again. Sant'Angelo, always good talking.
Thanks, Marco.
And go check out the Bonetti episode if you have not yet. One of our record episodes. So very proud of all the work that we've been doing. So we appreciate the support. Other than that, take care.